Hey, Reddit. I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these stories, but here we are. My name's Mark, 34, and I've been married to my wife, Jessica, for 6 years. We were one of those couples that everyone thought had it all together. Happy on the outside. Everything seemed perfect, until I found something that shattered my world. It started a few weeks ago. I was taking out the trash, just doing the usual chores, when I noticed something odd. There was a crumpled-up pregnancy test sitting on top of the trash. Now, Jessica and I had talked about kids for years, but here's the kicker. I had a vasectomy last year. We never told anyone because we didn't want questions or pressure from family. We were content, or so I thought, with not having kids for the time being. I picked up the test, hoping maybe I was wrong, that somehow there was an explanation. But it was positive. The room started to spin as I tried to process what this meant. I knew for a fact that the kid wasn't mine. That was impossible. But whose was it? I put the test back in the trash, trying to act like nothing had happened. I needed time to think, to figure out what I was going to do. My head was racing with 1,000 questions, but I kept it cool around Jessica. I couldn't let her know that I'd found it. Not yet. The next day, everything fell apart. Jessica was talking on the phone with her mom in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but when I heard her say, "Of course, I'll tell him it's his. My lover isn't ready for a baby. He might leave me. Besides, my husband has always wanted kids," I froze. My heart felt like it had been ripped out of my chest. I stood there, in shock, as she casually plotted how to pin this baby on me, all while continuing her affair. And her mom? She didn't even sound surprised. She was supporting her plan, telling her that everything would be fine, that I'd never find out. I had heard enough. I quietly left the house and drove around for hours, trying to figure out what to do next. My first thought was to confront her right away, but I knew that wouldn't be enough. She had already crossed too many lines. I needed a plan, a real plan. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Jessica's words over and over in my head, each one hitting me like a hammer. My wife, the woman I thought I knew, had been cheating on me for God knows how long. And now, she was pregnant with another man's baby. And worse, she was planning to make me believe it was mine. The next morning, I acted like nothing had changed. I made coffee, kissed Jessica on the cheek, and went through my usual routine. On the outside, I was the same loving husband, but inside, I was a mess. I didn't want to tip her off that I knew the truth. Not yet. I started paying closer attention to everything she did. Her phone calls, her messages, her comings and goings. She was good at covering her tracks, but I was better at spotting the cracks. I noticed the little things, how she suddenly had work meetings in the evenings that never used to happen, how she'd be texting someone late at night but lock her phone whenever I was around. I decided to dig deeper. I went through her phone while she was in the shower one morning. She didn't use a passcode, which was surprising for someone hiding such a huge secret. Maybe she thought I'd never be suspicious enough to check. The messages were there, plain as day. There were dozens of texts between her and some guy named Tyler. He wasn't in her contacts list, but the tone of their messages made it clear what was going on. They had been meeting up for months, during her work meetings, on weekends when I was out of town, even at our house when I was at work. My stomach churned as I read through them, each one more gut-wrenching than the last. And then, there it was, the confirmation I didn't want but knew I would find. A message from Tyler saying, "I'm not ready to be a dad. You need to fix this. Make sure Mark doesn't find out." I took screenshots of everything. I wasn't going to confront her just yet, but I needed to be ready when the time came. I knew confronting Jessica alone wouldn't be enough. She was manipulative, good at twisting the truth. If I simply told her I knew about the affair, she'd probably try to flip it on me, make me feel guilty, or cry and beg for forgiveness. I needed something more. That's when I came up with the idea to go after Tyler. He was just as guilty, maybe even more so, since he was trying to get out of the situation by having Jessica lie to me about the baby. I figured if I could ruin his life, it would be a blow to both of them. It didn't take long to track down Tyler's information. A quick search through Jessica's phone gave me enough details to find his social media profiles. And from there, I found out something interesting. Tyler was married too. His wife, Megan, had no idea what was going on. She had pictures of the two of them together, happy vacation photos, the usual lovey-dovey couple stuff. She probably had no clue that her husband was about to have a baby with another woman. I decided to send Megan everything: the screenshots, the messages, the pregnancy test. She needed to know what kind of man she was married to. If my life was falling apart, why should Tyler get off easy? I packed up my things while Jessica was at work. I didn't want to wait any longer. I left her a simple note: "You dug your own grave. I'm done." I blocked her number, deleted her from my life in every way possible, and walked out of that house with nothing but my dignity. Then, I hit send on the message to Tyler's wife. A few hours later, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I had a feeling I knew who it was. I answered. "Is this Mark?" A woman's voice. "Megan." "Yeah, who's this?" I replied, trying to sound casual, even though I already knew. "It's Megan, Tyler's wife." Her voice was shaking. "I got your message. Is this real? I need to know the truth." I sighed, feeling a mixture of guilt and satisfaction. "Yeah, Megan, it's real. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but your husband's been sleeping with my wife for months. And that baby she's carrying? It's his." There was silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, trying to process the bombshell I had just dropped. Then she spoke, her voice low and cold. "Thank you for telling me. But there's something else you need to know." I frowned, my heart pounding. "What?" She hesitated for a moment before saying, "Tyler isn't just cheating with your wife. He's been seeing someone else too. I found out a few weeks ago, but I didn't know how to confront him. I didn't know about your wife until now." My stomach dropped. Another woman? Tyler wasn't just a cheater. He was a serial liar. How deep did this rabbit hole go? Megan continued, her voice breaking. "He's been lying to both of us. And I'm done with him. If you want to ruin him, I'm in. Let's make sure he gets what he deserves." I sat there in shock, realizing that this whole situation was even more twisted than I had imagined. But one thing was clear: Tyler and Jessica weren't going to get away with this. And I had just found an unexpected ally in Megan. After that call with Megan, I knew I wasn't going to walk away quietly. Tyler and Jessica thought they could keep their secrets buried, but they had no idea what was coming for them. Megan and I were on the same page, and we started crafting a plan to make sure they both felt the full weight of their betrayal. We decided to take our time. If we moved too fast, they'd catch on. No, we wanted them to suffer a bit first. Let them think they're still in control before everything falls apart. Megan was a tough woman. After a few conversations, it became clear that she wasn't just hurt by Tyler's betrayal. She was furious. I think we bonded over that shared anger. We both felt blindsided by people we trusted, and now we were ready to fight back. I didn't expect to become allies with my wife's affair partner's wife, but here we were, planning the perfect revenge. The first step was collecting more evidence. Megan did some digging on her end while I continued to monitor Jessica's movements. The more we uncovered, the worse it got. Tyler wasn't just sleeping with Jessica. He had been with at least 2 other women over the past year, stringing all of them along with lies about wanting to leave his wife, but never actually doing it. It was disgusting, really. The guy had no sense of loyalty or guilt. But that was about to change. We decided to hit them both where it would hurt the most: their public image and their careers. Jessica worked in marketing, and her company had a strict code of ethics. If they found out about her affair and the lies she was telling, it wouldn't be hard to see her career crumble. As for Tyler, he was a mid-level manager at a tech company with a reputation to uphold. Megan had access to his emails and work communications. One wrong move, and his job would be in jeopardy. But the biggest part of our plan? The reveal. We were going to expose them both at the same time, in front of their closest friends, family, and colleagues. We figured out a way to ensure they'd both be present without suspecting a thing. It was bold, risky, and had the potential to backfire. But Megan, and I were determined to see it through. The night of the reveal was approaching fast. Megan and I worked in the shadows, gathering everything we needed to make sure it was airtight. I felt like I was living in a movie, plotting against my wife while she went about her day, completely unaware. She was still smiling, still pretending that everything was normal between us. But I knew the truth. I knew she was meeting Tyler during her lunch breaks and lying through her teeth every time she told me she was working late. The worst part was the baby. Every time she touched her stomach, I felt a wave of disgust. She was carrying another man's child, and she thought I'd raise it as my own. The audacity was almost laughable, but mostly, it just made me sick. Megan, meanwhile, had been playing nice with Tyler. She pretended like nothing was wrong, all while forwarding me his messages and logging into his work accounts to gather anything incriminating. It turned out Tyler had been making some shady deals at work, too, and we planned to leak that information at the right moment. Finally, the night arrived. Jessica and Tyler had no idea that Megan and I had orchestrated a dinner party at a local restaurant with a few of their closest friends. They thought it was just a casual get-together, something to relax after a long week. But Megan and I knew it would be anything but relaxing. We had invited everyone, Jessica's coworkers, her boss, Tyler's friends, and even his colleagues. It was going to be an audience they wouldn't forget. The venue was perfect, with a private dining area where we could control the narrative. As we sat at the table, waiting for Jessica and Tyler to arrive, my heart was racing. I wasn't nervous about the confrontation. I was ready for that. What I couldn't predict was how they'd react when everything came crashing down. Jessica walked in first, wearing the same confident smile I had seen so many times before. She greeted everyone warmly, as if she had no idea her world was about to implode. Tyler came in a few minutes later, giving Megan a kiss on the cheek like nothing was wrong. I watched the whole scene play out with a growing sense of satisfaction. They had no clue. We waited until everyone had settled in, had a few drinks, and started enjoying the dinner. Then, Megan and I exchanged a glance. It was time. Jessica, Tyler, Megan began, her voice calm but firm. There's something we need to discuss. Something you both have been hiding. The room went silent. I could see the confusion on their faces as Megan pulled out her phone and projected the texts onto the big screen behind us. Everyone in the room could see the conversations between Jessica and Tyler. Explicit, incriminating, and undeniable. Jessica's face drained of color as the realization hit her. Tyler looked like a deer in headlights, scrambling for something to say, but no words came out. You've both been lying to us for months, I added, my voice steady. And now, everyone here knows the truth. I could see the shock on the faces of their friends and coworkers as they read the messages. There was no escape for Jessica and Tyler. This was the end of their little affair, and they knew it. But we weren't done yet. Megan, do you want to share the next part? I asked, turning to her with a nod. Megan pulled out a folder and handed it to one of Tyler's coworkers. These are records of Tyler's unethical business deals. You might want to take these to HR before his next performance review. The room was in chaos at this point. Jessica was crying, begging me to listen to her, but I wasn't interested in anything she had to say. Tyler was trying to make excuses, but no one was listening. The damage had been done. The fallout from that night was brutal. Jessica's boss called her into the office the next day, and she was promptly fired for violating the company's ethics policy. Her reputation was destroyed, and word spread quickly among her colleagues. No one wanted to be associated with her after what had come out. Tyler, on the other hand, faced an internal investigation at his company. Megan handed over everything she had found, and within a week, he was suspended pending further review. His life was unraveling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. As for Megan and me, we moved on with our lives. We didn't become close friends or anything, but we kept in touch occasionally, checking in to see how things were going. She divorced Tyler soon after, and I finalized my divorce with Jessica a few months later. Looking back, I don't regret anything. They thought they could lie, cheat, and manipulate us, but they were wrong. They thought they could live their lives in secret, But the truth has a way of coming out eventually. And when it did, they had no one to blame but themselves. The days after the big reveal were surreal. The satisfaction of watching Jessica and Tyler crumble was sweet, but when I got home, the silence in the house was deafening. I hadn't really processed what life would look like after everything fell apart. The adrenaline from the event had worn off, and I was left sitting on the couch, staring at the remnants of a marriage that no longer existed. Jessica didn't come home that night. She must have stayed with a friend or gone somewhere to hide. Part of me wondered where she was, but the other part, the stronger part, just didn't care anymore. She had made her bed, and now she was lying in it. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely calm. The confrontation was over, but I still had to deal with the fallout. I knew that the next steps would involve lawyers, splitting assets, and formalizing the divorce. It was going to be a long, painful process, but at least the worst part, the betrayal, was already behind me. I took my time that day, slowly packing more of my things. I didn't want to stay in the house for long. It wasn't my home anymore. It was just a building full of memories that I didn't want to hold on to. Every corner, every piece of furniture, even the walls reminded me of the life Jessica and I had once shared. It felt hollow now, a shell of what had once been real. As I packed up the last of my things, Jessica finally called. I let the phone ring a few times before I answered. I wasn't sure what I was going to say to her, but part of me was curious about what she could possibly want. "Mark," she started, her voice shaky. "Please, can we talk?" There it was, the plea for forgiveness. I knew it was coming eventually, but hearing her voice, that guilt-laden tone, made my skin crawl. She had lied, cheated, and tried to deceive me in the worst possible way. There was no coming back from that. "There's nothing left to talk about, Jessica," I said flatly. "You destroyed everything." "I know I messed up, but," she began, but I cut her off. "There's no but, Jessica. You didn't just cheat. You were going to make me raise another man's baby. You lied about everything, and I don't want to hear your excuses." There was silence on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I wondered if she had hung up. But then, her voice broke through the quiet, trembling. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. "You could have told me the truth," I said, anger rising again. "You could have been honest from the start. Instead, you let this go on for months, and you thought you could manipulate me into believing it was my child." She sobbed, but I felt no sympathy. The coldness in my voice surprised me, but it was the only way I knew how to protect myself from her lies. "I just wanted a way out," she whispered. "Tyler didn't want the baby, and I thought you'd forgive me." "Forgive you?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "You don't get to ask for forgiveness, Jessica. Not after everything." There was another long pause, and then, quietly, she said, "I'm sorry, Mark. I'm so sorry." But it didn't matter. Her apologies didn't change the fact that she had crossed a line I couldn't come back from. I ended the call without saying another word and blocked her number. I didn't need to hear any more from her. I had already made up my mind. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, paperwork, and discussions with my lawyer. Jessica and I hadn't amassed a fortune, so dividing our assets wasn't the most complicated thing. But the emotional toll it took on both of us was undeniable. She didn't contest the divorce. In fact, she didn't fight for anything. I think she knew that she had lost, that there was no point in trying to cling to something that was already shattered. Her guilt was palpable during the few interactions we had through our lawyers. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction knowing that she was finally facing the consequences of her actions. Meanwhile, Tyler was going through his own personal hell. Megan had been true to her word, and she followed through with everything we had planned. She filed for divorce immediately after the dinner party, and from what I heard, it wasn't going well for Tyler. His company was conducting a full investigation into his shady business dealings, and the chances of him keeping his job were slim to none. Megan and I kept in touch during the process. We weren't friends exactly, but we had bonded over our shared pain and the satisfaction of bringing down our cheating spouses. She told me that Tyler had tried to reach out to her, too, begging for forgiveness. But like me, she wasn't interested in hearing it. We had both moved on emotionally, and there was no turning back. The divorce was finalized after a few months. Jessica had moved out of the house, and I sold it not long after. I didn't want to keep any part of the life we had shared together. I was ready for a fresh start, and that house held too many memories, most of them now tainted. As the paperwork was signed and the lawyers shook hands, I felt an unexpected wave of relief wash over me. It was over. The marriage, the lies, the pain. It was all officially behind me. I could finally start living my life again, free from the betrayal that had consumed me for so long. Once the dust settled, I found myself in a strange place. I was free, but I was also lost. For so long, my life had been defined by my relationship with Jessica, by the betrayal and the divorce. Now that it was over, I had to figure out who I was without all of that weighing me down. I threw myself into work, spending longer hours at the office and taking on more responsibilities. It helped keep my mind off everything, and for a while, it worked. I didn't have time to think about Jessica or the life we had lost. But eventually, the loneliness crept back in. I started going out with friends more, trying to reconnect with the people I had distanced myself from during the chaos of the divorce. I realized how much I had isolated myself, and it felt good to be surrounded by people who cared about me. But dating? That was a whole different beast. I wasn't sure if I was ready to trust anyone again, let alone put myself out there emotionally. The thought of opening up to someone after what Jessica had done to me was terrifying. How could I trust someone not to betray me like that again? Still, I knew I couldn't let what happened with Jessica define my future. I didn't want to live in fear or let her actions dictate the rest of my life. Slowly, cautiously, I started to dip my toes back into the dating pool. It wasn't easy. There were a few awkward dates, some bad experiences, and a lot of second-guessing. But I was determined to keep moving forward. One night, as I sat alone in my new apartment, I reflected on how far I had come. It hadn't been easy, and the pain hadn't disappeared overnight, but I was healing. I had survived the betrayal, the lies, and the heartache. And now, I was starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about the future. A few months after the divorce, I met someone. Her name was Rachel, and she was different from anyone I had ever dated before. There was something about her. Maybe it was her honesty, her straightforwardness, or the way she made me feel like I didn't have to be on guard all the time. We started off slow, just getting to know each other without any pressure. I was still cautious, still afraid of being hurt again. But Rachel was patient. She didn't push, didn't rush me into anything. She understood that I had been through hell and back, and she respected the walls I had built around myself. As we spent more time together, those walls began to crumble. I found myself trusting her in ways I hadn't trusted anyone since Jessica. I realized that not everyone was like my ex-wife. Not everyone would lie, cheat, and manipulate to get what they wanted. There were good people out there, people like Rachel, who were kind and honest. For the first time since the divorce, I felt like I could breathe again. I wasn't constantly looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next betrayal. I was finally able to let go of the past and focus on the future. A future that, for the first time in a long time, looked bright. Rachel and I continued to grow closer, and eventually, we moved in together. It wasn't perfect, no relationship is, but it was real, and that was all I had ever wanted. Looking back, I realized that everything that had happened with Jessica, as painful as it was, had led me to this point. It had made me stronger, wiser, and more careful about who I let into my life. It had taught me valuable lessons about trust, forgiveness, and moving on. I don't think about Jessica much anymore. She's a part of my past, a chapter that's long since closed. I'm not angry or bitter. I'm just done. She made her choices, and I made mine. And life had started to feel normal again, even happy. Rachel and I were building something solid, and I was more content than I had been in a long time. But just when I thought I had finally moved on from the chaos Jessica had brought into my life, something unexpected happened. One afternoon, while I was at work, My phone buzzed with a notification. I glanced at the screen and saw an email from Jessica. For a second, I froze. It had been nearly a year since our divorce was finalized, and I hadn't heard a word from her since that last phone call when I told her there was nothing left to discuss. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened the email and began to read. Mark, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, and I understand that. But I wanted to reach out because I've been doing a lot of thinking over the past few months, and I need to say some things that I never had the courage to say before. First of all, I'm sorry. Not just for what I did to you, but for the way I lied, manipulated, and tried to make you feel like you were the problem. You weren't. I was. I know that now. I've been in therapy since the divorce, trying to understand why I did the things I did. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted you to know that I've changed, or at least I'm trying to. I realize how deeply I hurt you, and I'll live with that guilt for the rest of my life. There's one more thing. I had the baby. A boy. His name is Caleb. He's healthy, and for all the chaos I caused, I love him more than anything. I thought you should know. I'm not asking for anything, Mark. I just needed to finally tell you the truth, the whole truth. I hope you're doing well. Jessica. I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to process what I had just read. Jessica had given birth to the child I once thought she would try to pass off as mine. The very thought of it brought back a rush of emotions. Anger, confusion, disbelief, but something else too. A small, unexpected wave of sympathy. She had clearly been going through her own version of hell. Not that it justified what she had done to me, but her reaching out, admitting her faults, felt different. It wasn't the same Jessica who had lied and manipulated. It was someone who seemed to be taking responsibility for her actions, maybe for the first time. Still, I wasn't sure what to do with this information. I wasn't about to reconnect with her or invite her back into my life. That bridge had been burned long ago, but I couldn't deny that her words had affected me in ways I hadn't expected. I decided not to respond, at least not right away. I wasn't ready to open that door again, even if it was just to close it properly. I'd talk to Rachel about it later, get her take on it. But for now, I let it sit in my inbox, a reminder of a past I was still trying to fully leave behind. That evening, I told Rachel about the email. She listened quietly, nodding as I read it out loud. When I was done, she gave me a thoughtful look. She sounds like she's trying to make amends, Rachel said, her voice calm. That doesn't mean you have to forgive her or let her back into your life, but maybe it's part of her healing process. I guess, I replied, feeling conflicted. It's just, I don't know what she expects from me. I don't want anything to do with her anymore, but now I know about the kid. It feels weird. Rachel reached out and took my hand. You don't owe her anything, Mark. She made her choices, and you've moved on. But if you want to acknowledge her email, even just to get some closure, that's up to you. You have every right to live your life without her in it. Her words were exactly what I needed to hear. I didn't have to carry Jessica's guilt. I didn't have to forgive her if I didn't want to. But Rachel also made me realize that maybe responding wasn't about Jessica. It was about me. About ending that chapter for good on my terms. Later that night, I sat down at my computer and wrote a short reply. Jessica, I appreciate you reaching out. I'm glad to hear that Caleb is healthy and that you're working on yourself. I've moved on, and I'm in a better place now. I hope you continue to find peace and healing, but I'm not interested in reopening the past. Take care. Mark. I hit send and felt an overwhelming sense of relief. It was done. There would be no more wondering, no more unfinished business. I had closed the door on that part of my life, and it was finally over. As the months passed, Jessica's email faded from my mind. I didn't dwell on it or feel any lingering attachment to the person she had been. My life with Rachel was my focus now, and things were good. Really good. We continued to build our life together, taking the next step slowly but steadily. Moving in with her had been one of the best decisions I'd ever made, and it wasn't long before we started talking about the future, about marriage, about kids, about everything I had once dreamed of with Jessica but now felt ready to embrace with someone new. One evening, After a long day at work, Rachel and I sat on the couch, wrapped in each other's arms, talking about nothing and everything. It was one of those moments where everything felt right, where I realized how far I'd come and how grateful I was for the second chance at happiness I'd found. Do you ever think about it? Rachel asked softly, her head resting on my shoulder. About what? I replied, kissing the top of her head. About everything you went through with Jessica. Does it still bother you? I thought about it for a moment, but then shook my head. Not anymore. It used to eat me alive, but I've let it go. I had to, for my own sanity. Besides, I'm happy now. I wouldn't trade what we have for anything. Rachel smiled, her eyes full of warmth. Good. Because I love you, Mark. And I'm glad you found your way back. I love you too, I said, feeling the weight of those words. And I meant it. The past was behind me. The lies, the betrayal, the heartbreak. It was all part of a story that had made me who I was, but it didn't define me anymore. I had found love again, real love, and I wasn't going to let anything from the past hold me back. For anyone reading this, wondering if they'll ever move on from the kind of betrayal I went through, just know that you can. It takes time, and it's not easy, but it's possible. You can heal, and you can find happiness again. Trust me, I did. And now, I'm finally ready for whatever the future holds.